everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to today's episode of WNY High School Sportsline. I'm very excited about the show today because we're going to be having some really cool guests that I've been trying to get on since really we started this thing. And I don't want to waste time. I want to get right into it. So, quick announcement. I did talk to Len Thornton, who is now tasked with running the Lions Club All-Star football game that is for the top seniors, football players from this past fall. And it's a game that, a lot of people over the years have this is the one game that they really want to play and to help close out that, their football career. Right, as of now, the game is still going on, okay? There's been no, how should I put this? The game's on, as of right now. Will they play it? Will they have fans? That yet to be seen, of course. But I talked to Len, no plans to change it right now. They will err on the side of caution, of course. They're getting those nominees in from the coaches. That's going on. So by the end of the month, they should have all the invites going out to all those seniors So we're there. We're moving towards having that game. It will be at Will South. Rob Curran will coach the South. He is the outgoing coach at Alden. He resigned. He will not be returning to Alden as the head coach this year, but he is going to coach the South team. And the North is coached by Craig Kurzanski of Williamsville South, the host team. So we'll have to wait and see. But the rosters should be set, or at least the invitations will be going out by the end of this month. So fingers crossed that game may or may not have fans. If they do, after what we've just gone through, there could be 5,000 people at that game. So fingers crossed. Hey, let's not fool around anymore. We're talking all Western New York, boys basketball today. We've got a number of guests, coaches, Larry Jones, Tony Pulvirenti, Kyle Husband, John Otto, and Jim King. They're all coming in. Cannot wait to talk to them. And then after that, I've got Chad Andrews. I got Tom Prince from WNY Athletics. And Miguel Rodriguez is going to make his first appearance on WNY Athletics. We are so excited to have Miguel. You can't really do this without him. So I'm very grateful to McGee to spending some time with us today. Very excited. And we should either have Scott Kinberg or Matt Spielman from the Post-Journal. You'll know when I know, I guess. But we're hoping they join us today because we want to make sure we have someone representing the Southern Tier players. Chad's been down there a bunch of times. Tom's been down there. Miggy's been down there. I've been down there. We've seen those players, but it's nice to have someone that lives there, that sees them day in, day out, and reports on them to make sure they get enough support recognition, if you will. Girls basketball, we will get there too. We're going to do the boys today. When we get around to it, we'll do the girls as well. No one's going to be left out. We still got hockey to do, boys and girls, but today is all about boys basketball. Public, private, park, we're doing them all. Get ready for a great episode of WNY High School Sportsline.
WNYathletics.com is the premier high school sports website in Western New York, providing the best sports coverage of Section 6 and Monsignor Martin leagues. Check out our page for daily game recaps and late-breaking sports news. Our online scoreboards are updated in real time. Never miss a goal or touchdown. Visit WNYathletics.com today or follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to WNY High School Sportsline. I'm back with some of the best coaches around Western New York when it comes to high school basketball. Couldn't get everyone in, but I'm joined by Larry Jones from Depew, Jim Kane from Middle Early College, Tony Pulvirenti from Cardinal O'Hara, and Kyle Husband from Canisius. Two guys from Monsignor Martin and another couple from Section 6. We were supposed to have John Otto on from Lancaster, but I messed this up big time. This is the second shoot. I apologize to everyone. These four guys came back to do it after I forgot to hit record the first time around. So, I'm having a freshman moment. But anyways, it was a tremendous high school basketball season. Any way you slice it, even though it didn't end necessarily the way we all wanted it to. We're proud of the work that these coaches and all the coaches in Western New York put in, especially the work of those athletes as well. I'm going to start with the chairman, Larry Jones, first off. Larry, thank you very much for joining us. I wanted to ask you a couple things. With Section 6 being awarded the boys Far West Regionals this year, and with that canceling out, will you get them next year, or do you lose your turn and you're going to have to go to Rochester next year, Section 5?
Both of the executive directors, Tim Slade from our area and the Section 5 executive director, have been in, I say, negotiations. They've been talking about it, and it's not set in stone yet, but my understanding is that we will host next year again. I don't know if the girls will stay in Rochester, and normally we divide and conquer. They're happening there while we happen here, and vice versa. But my understanding is that as of right now, that next year we will host the regionals. Yes.
Okay, and I don't want to forget, I forgot to ask you first time around, but BCANY, what's the latest with BCANY, and what does this COVID shutdown, how does that affect what you're doing? You're the president, not just the chairman of Section 6 basketball, but you're also the president of BCANY.
Yeah, I kind of wear a lot of hats. Right now, we are in the same holding pattern that everyone is. Normally, our big banquet would be this coming Monday at Ilios, and we'd hand out our awards and our coaches of the year and things of that nature. Unfortunately, that's just not happening. What's really disappointing is that we had two gentlemen, Starling Bryant from East High School in Buffalo and former Section 6 chairman Jim Walker and Newport coach. Both were being inducted into the Hall of Fame, which would have been Final Four weekend about a month ago now, and they both missed out on that opportunity. So there's nothing set in stone there yet either, if we're going to have a ceremony later this summer or fall, or maybe this year's inductees, the whole class will just move to the following year. So we've had to push that forward. We're very concerned about whether or not we'll be able to hold Hoops Fest this August. It's usually the first weekend in August. Normally it's held in Johnson City, just outside of the Binghamton area. They've got a great complex there. And, I've had guys, players from each of these three coaches have all played for us in the past. And it's a great experience for the kids. But, if we're not in school, we can't hold tryouts. And I'm not even sure that there'd be a facility that would have the opportunity to host at this point. And like I said, Johnson City, who has always been our host, they're in the middle of a major construction project that I'm sure that even that has been put on hold some. We had looked at Shenandoah High School, but that's not far from the entire early onset outbreak down in New Rochelle. So we don't even have a home right now. So yeah, things are really up in the air, and unfortunately not looking good for the summer as of right now.
I'm going to move on over to Tony Pulvirenti from Cardinal O'Hara, Monsignor Martin coach, and also an athletic director there. Tony, how has this put the crunch on what you guys are doing within the Monsignor Martin, how it affects Cardinal O'Hara, your spring sports, and things of that nature, and what you're trying to do with your program there over the summer?
Yeah, it affects basketball a couple different ways. It affects the seniors as far as their exposure and their contact with colleges and visiting campuses and things like that. And then it affects our team moving forward this summer on the uncertainty of being able to play in the summer leagues and do our own training. And I see most of the colleges have already canceled their camps. We're looking forward to going to a few team camps as we normally do, but I see most of those are canceled now. And then unfortunately, spring sports, they take the worst effect of all this. That it looks like their season isn't going to happen at all. Everybody's trying to stay hopeful, but at this point, there's just so much uncertainty. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in the next month or so.
Avion Harris was a second-team All-Star in the All-Western New York this past Sunday's edition of the Buffalo News. Just talk about the season he had, and as a senior, what type of looks he's getting and how this COVID is affecting his recruiting process.
Yeah, he's a great kid and had a great season, and really his leadership helped us get back to that championship again for the third straight year. And he's improved individually every year I've known him for the last few years, and he's just very determined to be the best he can. And it's kind of infectious and helped their team. I think we won 6 of our last 8 games after starting pretty slow, and we were pretty competitive down the stretch. And great example for what the other guys coming back should be like as an upperclassman next year, and how to lead a team. So his recruiting, he's got a lot of Division II and Division III interest, and that would probably be moving further along right now if we can have him on campuses and meeting coaches face to face. But we're doing some Zoom meetings and emails and calls and that type of stuff. So hopefully it all works out for him.
Going to move on down back into Section 6 real quick with Coach Jim Kane from Middle Early College, the Section 6 Class C champion. They bullied their way through Buff State. They were getting ready to go play that Section 5 team. Coach Kane, just talk about winning the Section 6 title. Your first, you got a first teamer there, and Jamon Jones, very exciting player. JJ, he was just a very exciting player to watch. Talk about him, and then how your season unfortunately came to an abrupt end there, and how far you thought your team was going to go.
I just want to say something briefly. It's an honor to be talking with these coaches. Kyle was coaching when I was in high school, and he coached me on an all-star team. I think we lost to him twice my senior year, and then Tony being the coach of the year last year, obviously John and, Larry. So it's kind of cool, being my third year and being on a talk show with these guys is cool. Jamon, he had a good year. I thought he really picked it up towards the end of the year, and he was something special to see in those last few games. We played Park our last regular season game. He didn't come out with a great first half, but he came out and really battled in the second half. He hit 5 threes in that second half. And then from there on, it just seemed like his focus and his determination in practice was at a different level. He just wanted to be the best guy in practice every single day. And, we had some scrimmages before the playoffs that I thought he played very well in. And then obviously the whole playoff run, he was a big part of our run. We looked at him for scoring. I thought we found a good mesh at the end of the season as far as who was taking shots, what guys' roles were. It was a little more carved out, where in the beginning of the season, not everyone kind of understood or knew their role at the point to getting the team over the top and to winning. But it seemed like once it came down to the playoffs, everyone was focused and understood their role and was able to, complete a whole team effort. But I can't commend Jamon. I mean, he was locked in. He hit 81 threes on the year, so he improved his shooting a lot his senior year. Just overall body strength. And like I was saying before, he's a young senior, just turned 17 years old, so he has room to really fill out. And I honestly think he could grow. He's at about 6'2" right now. I think he might be growing still a little bit. So just can't commend him enough. Made every practice, was at every practice. So it was a great kid to be around, and he was my JV point guard my first year coaching. So I've had him every year. He's been my point guard every year. So next year it's going to be a definite switch up. Not having him run the point.
I'm going to go up to Kyle Husband. Kyle Husband, another very, very successful campaign at Canisius, led by Dwayne Voss, all Western New York first team. Let's talk about Mr. Voss, his prospects. And how Canisius, you guys were on a roll too there at the end. I know you had a couple of tough losses with Health Sciences and Timon, but your team was starting to feel that groove again, and it looks like you guys were going to bully your way to a possible Catholic state championship.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, first off with Dwayne, I really can't say enough about him. Not only his basketball ability and what he did on the court for us all year, but he's absolutely a great kid. Really good student, and absolutely loves basketball. So, I think his ceiling is just really, really high. I can't wait to see where he ends up and then where his college career takes him. Unfortunately, so many of these kids have to play in the spring even after their senior year because, well, obviously they all want to play at the highest level, and this is a good opportunity for them in most cases to be able to do that. With the virus and things, that's not the case this summer or this spring. So, it's going to put a lot of these kids behind the 8 ball even more than they usually are. So we'll see where the summer takes him, and then obviously into next year. At the end of the year, I really liked our chances in that, in that last game. Fordham Prep was a really good team, but they were coming to Buffalo, and that's really, to take a bus 7 hours, stay in a hotel, get up, and have to. I mean, it's a big task. We did a good job of it the week prior, which was fun and exciting against St. Anthony's. But again, I did like our chances moving forward. That following weekend. And yeah, you're right. Those two losses back to back. I mentioned it earlier. Losses can be a good thing for a team. We were really rolling and probably got a little too cocky. Thought a little too much of ourselves. That really regrounded us and catapulted us forward. We were playing our best basketball at the end of the year.
Kyle, I'm going to stick with you. In terms of the Monsignor Martin, players that you saw that were just playing on a different level, but we may not know a lot about. We know the big schools, the big players, and we know the guys that rise to the occasion, Avion Harris, Vass. Just talk about some of those other Monsignor Martin players, the private school kids that we may not have heard a whole heck of a lot, but really left a big impression on you.
Well, I know you mentioned Harris, but, I was most impressed with how much he changed from a leader standpoint in the last couple of years. Not only when we played them this year, but watching him play, his attitude was just different. And that was impressive first and foremost. But the time in backcourt, the Patton kid, man, he's really, really good. I thought he had a chance at first team all Western New York. I mean, torched us twice. You can't stay in front of him. And then when you back off, his range was unlimited. For his scoring ability was something I haven't seen all year. And then to match him with Gudalek, I mean, that's going to be a heck of a combo next year. And then the Joes group, like Harris, the Ashley kid, I thought really matured and played a role for St. Joe's that was underrated and really, really important for them. And then obviously they got the three kids coming back between Glover, Slaughter, and Haskell. They're going to be a handful. The last kid is the Casiglia kid from Franny's, kind of underrated. They played a really tough schedule. But the Casiglia, he can really shoot it. He'll be fun to watch next year as well.
I'm going to stick in the Monsignor Martin with Coach Tony P. down there. He was the 2019 Centercourt Coach of the Year. This year's Centercourt Coach of the Year, John Otto, unfortunately wasn't able to make it for round 2 of this interview. I'm going to have to buy him a beer at some point for that. I'll buy all you guys a beer at some point for that. But Coach Tony P. O'Hara, from what you had last year and how far you guys went, you lost a lot. Not just to graduation either. I mean, you guys lost a considerable amount of talent, but we're still able to hang in there with a lot of these teams. You got a very impressive record, beats a number of very good teams. Just talk about O'Hara from last year, how you transitioned into this season, and then some of those players that you saw across the Western New York landscape, players that stood out for you, and if you wouldn't mind, some of the coaches as well.
Yeah, we had a young group of guys this year. We finished the season with 7 sophomores on varsity. Avion was our only senior. But we spent a lot of time together throughout the summer and fall and developed some chemistry early. So I was hopeful with the way the season would go. But being a young team, we dropped a few games I thought we should have won or could have won. But like Kyle mentioned, especially our non-league schedule, every year I always say we could win 3 or 4 more games, but I'd rather play health science. I'd rather play middle early college. I'd rather play those tough, challenging games because win or lose, I feel that we get better and we're more prepared to play in the postseason. So that's why we do that. As far as some of the players I saw, Kyle touched on Deshaun Ashley. I was just going through some of the names of players that I voted for all West New York that didn't get it. He was a guy I thought he was St. Joe's best, most consistent player. I was impressed with him both times we played, and he was a real leader, and he was kind of the rock of the team. As far as coaches, John Otto got the Centercourt Award. I agreed with that. Thought Ty Parker did a great job with health science. Jason Rowe with Timon. They beat us twice. They beat Canisius once. And And then James Kane, I thought they could have won a Class C state championship this year if we finished this out. So,
How about that Nichols program? We don't really see a whole lot of that. I don't see a whole heck of a lot of them. Just talk about some of that program, maybe a player or two there. They had a couple that made that all-Catholic B team.
Yeah, Nichols, unfortunately, Aiden Horan got hurt this year. And, as far as seeing a different player, I thought he was not only a very good player, but his attitude had changed and improved. He was, a better leader. And, they have a great group coming back, too. I mean, Aiden, to my knowledge, was their only senior. And he was leading Monsignor Martin scoring when he got hurt. So Nichols should return. A few guys who are good. Their backcourt, Hugh Perks and Jesse Adamu. They should have a pretty strong squad coming back next year as well.
Going to hop on over to Class B, Mr. Larry Jones from Depew. I got one question about the Class B players. Is there a team there that really impressed you, coaches? Things of that nature. Obviously, the new coach at Olean. Just talk about some of the coaches and players in Class B. And you were at Buff State all weekend long for a lot of those great games. Who really impressed you when you were at Buff State taking all those games in?
Well, you're right. Class B has a lot of schools that probably don't have the name recognition that the schools we've already spoken to have. But they still have some incredibly, the basic difference is, Kyle's got a kid that's 6'3" and weighs 220 and can shoot it. Well, our kid that does that is 5'11", weighs 180 pounds. And so physically it's just difficult to match up with the larger schools. The kids have similar skill sets, but not that kind of size a lot of the time. So when you're dealing with Class B schools, that's kind of what we have. We got some really good players that just may not be quite as big and, can't handle that kind of a physical game. But having said that, a lot of talent there. You saw what the Olean program did. They continued their tremendous play. The Covey James kid, it's interesting. How in the world does a kid that talented not even break the starting lineup last year at Olean on a team that goes to the state Final Four? It tells you, how good their program has been. And Tim Kolazinski, their coach, he's been the JV coach there 8 or 10 years. I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but he had helped Jeff Anastasia for a number of years. And obviously, Jeff, we don't have to talk about his record. It speaks for itself. But Tim did nothing to hurt the Olean program. He's a tremendous coach in his own right and did a great job with their group. When you look at some of the other schools in the Southern Tier, Randolph had a tremendous year. I know that's Class C, but Kevin Hine did a wonderful job with them. Some of the other B schools, Allegheny Limestone was tremendous. Had a great year once again. Glenn Anderson does a sensational job with that group. The Casey kid, I don't know where he finished in balloting in all Western New York, even if he made one of the teams. I don't recall, to be honest with you, but very, very good player. His dad's an assistant at Bonaventure, and I'm sure he reaps the benefit of getting a little extra time on the court sometimes. When you talk about some of the other B schools up north, you've got Newfane, who perennially is very, very good. And they had the Sprock kid this year, who was a very complete player. We played Albion in the playoffs. They were a very, very good, well-balanced team as well. Wilson is always very competitive with Coach Sipple up there. They've had some very good players in the past. And you may not know a lot of the names of these kids. They're not household names like, say, the Jones kid from Middle College or Health Science or Voss from Canisius. But in their own right, there's some very, very good players. Chris Castellani at East Aurora does a great job with their program. They're consistently showing up above state and doing well. So a lot of good teams and programs that people just don't know as much about.
Coach, Chairman, you have a difficult job every year, and you have a committee that takes a look at these teams, how they've performed, not just last year, but have been on, the last few years. One of those teams that people always come to me about is some of the charter schools, where they are classed, why they're here, why they're not down where, they're supposed to be. Explain why some of these teams are where they're at and why they're moved up into classes where they're seeing better competition or, where they're supposed to be.
It's interesting. We live in a politically correct world, and everyone wants everything to be fair for everybody. And so, with that in mind, we try and do that within the basketball community. And Health Science has a tremendous program. Their coach, Ty Parker, has done a great job of coaching some very, very good players. And the charter schools in general have some benefits that public schools don't necessarily have. They have unlimited boundaries. They have the ability to get kids in through their lottery systems. And because of some of these, and we look at a number of factors when we say, do they belong in Class B? Can they compete with Class B schools? Well, they've shown that they not only can compete with Class B schools, but they can dominate them. This year alone, I think each one here, I think all three coaches, did you all lose to Health Science this year, I believe? With that in mind, and these are three great programs we're talking about between Middle College, Canisius, and O'Hara. And so to keep them down in Class B when they're beating the top teams in Western New York just doesn't really seem to make sense. And when they leave our area, are going to represent us, we want them representing us at the highest possible level where they could compete. I believe if they were in Class B, it would have been a bit of a walkthrough. They just had so many physically gifted players that were so well coached and had been in a lot of big games. We wanted to give them the opportunity to perform on an even bigger stage. And so our sectional committee takes a number of factors into account when we look at moving a team up. It's not something we've done a lot of. And in fact, it's really been something, a formula that's, relatively new in the process that the athletic council has put together and that we have followed now for the past few years. We in Section 6 are the outlier. The rest of New York State, if you look at Section 5, if you look at Section 3, their Catholic schools are included right in the public schools for the playoffs. And we are the one outlier that does not do that. Monsignor Martin has their own playoffs, then goes to the Federation tournament, or their own tournament, I should say, first before the Federation. And so because of that, we have to have a way of taking a school such as Health Science that has unlimited boundaries, that has resources that public schools may not have, and find the best fit for them to make it fair for all of Western New York.
I've talked to some of the charter schools in the past, and they want to make it perfectly clear to me that they are a Buffalo public school. They are not a private school. They do not have the ability to recruit. They do not have the ability to handpick players. But I don't know how true that is and how true it isn't. And I don't even really want to have that discussion here. To be perfectly honest, I think it just opens up a can of worms and makes some people uncomfortable that are either at those schools or think about where to send their child next fall. But
it's a hot topic, and it can be a difficult conversation. I don't mind having it because it's out there. It's the elephant in the room, as it were. So we're not trying to make hard feelings for everyone. We're just trying to do what's best for the competitive balance of basketball in the Western New York area.
I'm going to go back down to Coach Kane. Coach Kane, you had a player on the All-Western New York top team in Jamon Jones. How he has matured over the past few years, how he took control of your offense, and was it – you want to do what's right for your kids all the time, but when you have a player as special as Jamon is do you take a look at scheduling opponents that not just necessarily make you a better coach, your players better, but when you have to look at the talent on your team and say, look, I've got a special kid here. I have to get him matched up against some of these tougher teams in a non-conference, non-league environment.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, I reached out to Kyle before the season. We were unable to get, something scheduled, but we tried putting Canisius on the roster. We played Park twice, which he's going against Bradbury twice. And then Keonjay Carter. I mean, they got players. They have great players over there. And then, we faced O'Hara, so he's going against Avion Harris. We faced Health Science. He's going against Jonesy. We faced Newport. He's going against Roddy Gale. We faced Amherst. He's going against that backcourt of Stewie and Nick O'Neal. We faced Nichols when they still had Aiden, and I think that rounds out our non-league schedule. I can't Orchard Park we played, and they actually put it on us pretty good. I think that was our worst game of the year. But yeah, like you said, my goal was to get Jamon recognition throughout like the basketball community and having him go toe to toe with these top players and trying to get the best out of them and especially towards the end of the season where we were able to hit the playoffs in stride and get going, which was really beneficial for us. But you definitely look at that as a coach, trying to schedule the top teams, the top players in the area. And you always want to play against the top competition. So I thought I did a pretty good job of scheduling us this year and getting us ready for the playoffs. It wasn't always easy during the season, taking losses, a few tough losses in those non-league games. But I think it was the right balance with us going undefeated in the league. I think it kept us grounded a little bit. Like Kyle said, if the non-league was a little bit easier, we went 19-1, maybe we do slip up in the playoffs or maybe, we have a slip up here and there. But I thought we were battle tested. This group lost in the state championship last year, and another tough game that, we wish we could have back, but you obviously can't. And so this team was battle tested, just playing the top teams in Western New York. And, I love these guys. I'm losing 6 rotation players next year, and they were great kids, great kids off the court, on the court. So, it's going to be really tough losing these guys.
It's definitely a tough way to end the season for you guys. You didn't really get a chance to battle test your guys against the best in the state, outside of Western New York. I mean, playing the schedule you did was ridiculous schedule. Playing Park twice, going toe-to-toe with those guys in health sciences and everything else. It was a complete year for middle early college. Of course, you just didn't get to end the way you did because a lot of people pegged you guys as getting into that Final Four, if you will, or getting, out to Glens Falls. What did you know about your Section 5 opponent? And I believe you scouted them right after you won. Did you not head right out to Rochester?
Yeah, we actually went up to Cal Mumford, and it was a wild environment up there. I know Larry was up at the game, but the game was packed. They had to stop it a couple times because it was getting rowdy in the crowd. It was jam-packed in there, and it kind of scares you thinking about the corona and everything, to be honest with you. But, we were in this packed gym, and, they had a very good point guard. They got the ball out very quick. They got up the floor very quick. Spot up. They were looking to spot up shooters. Very fundamental. I think we could have gave them problems with handling the ball. It seemed like they had one primary ball handler. We were successful taking Tyler away against Randolph, and something similar against Tapestry with Tyreek. We just wanted to get the ball in other guys' hands and have them bring it up. So if we made it uncomfortable for this team, it didn't seem like they had too great of a second ball handler. And I believe that they would have lost the size advantage. We were very big inside compared to them. And I think we could have did some damage on the boards, which obviously would have been beneficial. So I think we had a great shot. And going through the rest of the way, we had our eyes on a couple teams, Weed Sport, and I'm trying to think of I can't think of the other team off the top of my head. But you watch them closely throughout the season, and but I would battle against this team against anyone. I would go toe to toe with anyone right now with this team. So it's tough to say that I think we're going to lose because I didn't think we were going to lose the rest of the way, to be honest with you.
I don't know when you guys sit down and start making your schedules for the next season, but is this a team, the Section 5 team, that you would work to get on your schedule, or is it a moot point at this? Is it now a moot point?
I haven't been a huge fan of scheduling playoff opponents as non-leagues. I know Randolph reached out a couple times. I think Tapestry asked me. We did play Tapestry actually, but we were in Class B my first year because before they had combined 2 schools, so it counted over into the next year. So my first year we were Class B. We played Tapestry, and I think they reached out about playing again, but. I'd rather schedule a couple different teams around Western New York. Maybe if I see they have similar attributes, is to try to schedule a team that's similar to Tapestry or maybe similar to Randolph or someone that we'll see. But I'm not a huge fan of putting playoff opponents on the non-league schedule.
I'm going to go back up to Kyle Husband. Kyle, in regards to football right now, it's been very difficult for Monsignor Martin to put games together. Because of a few outside factors, losing. I know that they lost Timon and O'Hara on their schedule in St. Mary's. You don't seem to necessarily have that problem with basketball. You've got plenty of opponents. Talk about putting your schedule together, not just this past year, but going forward, like, what are you looking for who do you want to get on your schedule for next year? Who are you going to work to get? And what type of matchups are you looking as a coach? What type of matchups are you looking for as a fan of high school basketball?
I mean, I think any of these local showcases are a lot of fun. Larry's always done a great job putting matchups and different leagues against each other. I think anytime you can get good local games against each other in front of a big crowd is ideal, right? So I'll start there. You know, I've already talked to Chad. We're definitely going to do the Centercourt Classic again. We kick off the season with our Tom Keenan Classic, which we're talking to teams already, trying to get Jamestown involved in that this year. We always go out of town in between Christmas and New Year's, which I think is really big for our program and our team. Not a lot of teams have that opportunity, and we've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. You know, we went to D.C. about 8 years in a row, and we've gone to Atlanta the last 3 years. A lot of fun, a lot of great bonding, and some really good basketball. And then outside of that, we fill in with just, you know, the best opponents that we can. We always play Cathedral Prep, a couple teams from Rochester. So then it starts coming into form. But we start working on that now. You know, the next couple months are probably the most important.
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. You can plead the fifth or just say, Wolf, I'm not answering that one. But obviously, with the way the season started, or just before the season, there was an issue with Park bringing a player back that may or may not have been eligible for Monsignor Martin deemed him ineligible. He fell off. Park fell off a lot of schedules, if you will. Is it something that you think could have long-term ramifications, or you expect next year Park to rejoin Monsignor Martin, or what's your take on that?
I'll definitely answer. I mean, before last season, I thought that, you know, the timing was wrong, was off. Our league voted one way, and then that became an athletic director's decision as far as, you know, not playing them. I think the timing had a big part of that. Moving into next season, they definitely would have been welcome back. They've already chosen not to be part of our league, which I think is unfortunate. I think our league is deeper and better, and you know, there's better games throughout Western New York when they're part of it. Again, we do have rules and guidelines that we all have to play by, and no one should be outside of that. That being said, I'd love to play him next year. So, you know, we'll see where that goes or how that goes. This year was out of my control, like a lot of us. And then the way that whole St. Joe's thing went down wasn't, you know, didn't seem to make a lot of sense either, which was really unfortunate for a lot of kids in West New York that were looking forward to that.
I would agree with that. I'm going to go to Tony real fast. Tony, outside of Avion Harris, I know you got some young players there, but just talk about how you're trying to build up not just – I mean, you've got some athletes there, no question about it. You got some good ball players, but building up their IQ as well, that basketball IQ. How important is it to get those guys in the classroom and just watching film and just teaching them that it's not just about the athletic side of things. You got to also have that IQ, especially in the teams you match up against.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate to have Huddle like most programs do nowadays. So, you know, they can all view the film on their phones or on the computers. And, you know, this is a good time right now to reflect on the season and reflect on where we should be moving forward. And we should have most of our roster coming back. And these guys are hungry and they're determined. They saw what our team did a year ago, and they're all motivated by that success, and they want to be a part of something like that. So, you know, at this point, I'm hoping, you know, the summer goes well for all teams and all players, and we're able to work out in our own gyms or, you know, play in leagues and, you know, enjoy our off seasons and get better as a team, and both individually and as a team. So I'm hoping, you know, the next couple of months that, you know, we're able to get back together again.
Tony, outside your program, a player or two that we have not talked about yet that left an impression on you that's coming back next year, or maybe he's graduating, Is there one guy out there that we haven't talked about that we may not really been paying attention to that we really need to start focusing on? It could be a public school, private school. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
we touched
I
on
know you get
Deshaun.
around. I say I at Buff State.
Yeah, we talked about Deshaun Ashley. There's every year there's probably a handful of guys when the All West New York teams come out that you could say this guy or that guy, should have been on there, could have been on there. It's, there's a lot of tough decisions that go on. Danny Carter from East High was a senior this year. He scored 39 points versus us. We were fortunately to pull out the victory, but he had 39 points versus us and was almost unstoppable in that game. And I thought he had a pretty good year from what I saw. Nate Reinick from West Seneca West, another kid I've been watching the last few years, has had a lot of success there. Dante Moultrie from North Tonawanda, they almost beat Health Science. And, I thought he had a great high school career there, great senior year. Those are just a few guys I saw this year that I thought stood out. As far as Monsignor Martin, it seems like most teams have a lot of guys coming back, or a good portion of their guys coming back. So next year should be a lot of fun.
Tony, another question here. Outside of Cardinal O'Hara, toughest gym for you to play in as a team, and maybe the most unique, but really, what's the toughest environment that the O'Hara Hawks walk into in that Monsignor Martin or whatever gym you're playing in?
Well, I think a lot of coaches and players can say Timon's probably the toughest or one of the toughest just because the unique situation they have there where it's auditorium seating. It's kind of a smaller, compact room where, it seems like the fans are almost on top of you, almost like Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke, And I think that's a huge advantage for them. They practice there every day. They're used to the court, and I would say as far as our league, that's the toughest place to play.
I'm going to go to Mr. 300 wins over here, Depew coach Larry Jones. Larry, let me try to unmute you there. Why won't that unmute Larry's phone?
We're all set.
There we go. All right, Mr. Jones, you picked up your 300th win this year. Congratulations on that once again. Some of the best environments for you to coach in, what are they?
First of all, thank you on the 300. That's a lot of great players, a lot of time spent in the gym, and 300 wins goes with my 6,000 losses. So, it's all good. Best places to go. East Aurora, when we go there, we've not had a lot of success, and they have a great fan base that always does very well. Iroquois is back in our division, and, they've been tough the last few years, but our biggest rival for the last 15 years has been Maryville, and every time we go there, the place is packed, it's loud, it's a tiny little gym, everyone's right on top of you, and when you get a win there, that's incredibly satisfying. They've been somewhat few and far between, but, Coach Kens did a great job there for many years, and Ryan Moore, their new coach, does a great job as well. So I would say for us, going to Maryville is always difficult.
Coach Jones, outside of maybe the All-Western New York first team, is there one player that really stood out to you?
It's interesting because when you talk about, we're a big section, being the chairman, we got 98 schools, not counting Monsignor Martin. And so, there's over 110 schools, and you put minimum of 10 players in each, that's 1,100 kids we're talking about. And so to put it down to the 20 best, that's a difficult decision. But I can tell you within our own league, I'm trying to think, the Cheektowaga had a big kid, Nevada Eldridge, a very, very good young player with a lot of ability and size that probably not a lot of people heard a lot about this year. The Will Covington, the kid from East Aurora, kind of a big guard that can score and defend very well that not a lot of people knew about. I had two captains who I loved to death, and they got very, very little recognition at all. We won 14 games, which, that's be that good, bad, or indifferent. We were 3-6 in early January, and but the two of them just stuck with it, kept our team going. And, we ended up winning 11 of our last 12. And my two captains, seniors Davon March and PJ Burns, they never let us in scoring. Or occasionally, they might have had a game or two where they were our leading scorers, but they defended. They shot it well at times. They came through in clutch situations. We needed a defensive stop. They didn't matter what position teams played. They held. They always had the best two players in the other team. So kids like that, I think every coach has got one or two that they would say is unsung that no one knows about, that do a tremendous job within their own program that you would not win without them, but they're never going to get the kind of recognition that you're talking about.
Coach Jones, you were there at Buff State for those crossover games. One moment in particular that you're not going to forget? One game that stood out above the rest?
Oh, the Kobe James shot for Olean against Allegheny was ridiculous. Allegheny completely outplayed them. They held Olean to 30 points through three quarters. I think Olean had 35 points in the first quarter against me. It was really, Olean actually, they won ECIC 3 this year. They went through the playoffs. They beat Iroquois in Iroquois. They beat us in the semis. Then they beat East Aurora in the final. Now they get to the crossover game with Allegheny, and Allegheny holds the upper hand most of the game. And it comes down to Olean battling back, making some free throws, making some tough shots, and all of a sudden they've got a chance in the last few seconds, and the James kid just comes out of nowhere, hits a three from 25 feet at the top of the key. It was a great finish to a tremendous, very low scoring, but still a very well played and exciting game.
If I remember correctly, he had a relatively quiet game until
they did a tremendous job on him defensively.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's a physically gifted, talented player that Allegheny, of course, they play them twice a year. And Glenn Anderson, Allegheny coach, knows them inside out. He knows what works for them. He knows what they do. And same thing can be said about Olean. They took away everything that Allegheny did as well. So, just came down to, defending and making shots at the end.
Kyle Husband, what did you take away from this season? Not just Canisius, but Western New York in particular.
Well, for me personally, just a lot of enjoyment. I really had a great group. A few seniors that were terrific. We just had a lot of fun. Through the ups and downs, just another year of, we a lot of good success, but more importantly, a lot of great relationships and a lot of fun. I thought Western New York in general just had such great parity, which makes, I think going into the year, you could have picked a handful of teams at almost every section or every division to see who would have, to guess who would have won. And I don't know how many people would have certainly have picked it right across the board. So I thought the parity was terrific. I thought there was a lot of great games, some showcases that were great for the fans, great for the kids, and great for Western New York basketball. So I think that's going to happen again next year. I don't think there's one team that's just going to be dominant in the area, which makes it a lot of fun.
I'm going to go down to Coach Kane one more time here. Coach Kane, you guys win the Section 6 Class C title. You guys are up here, right? You're practicing, you're busting your butts to get ready for Section 5, and then you get the news. How do you receive the news that you're not going to be able to play for that Far West Regional and the season is essentially done? How do you receive the news? And then again, how do you break that to your team?
It's actually funny because I'm not the most outspoken guy. Like I work with the staff, and sometimes I won't really express myself too much. So the players had called me, and I was actually writing up the practice plan. We were about to start practice in about a half an hour. We were just going over things, and then we got the call that it was canceled. First they said there would be no spectators, and then they said it was going to be canceled. So players were calling me, and they're like, "Is it really canceled?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then it's just funny because a couple guys reached out to me first. They're saying, "Hey, coach, don't worry about it. Like things will be all right." So it was more of them reaching out to me before I even because I kind of didn't process it right away. I was kind of just I didn't want it to be real almost at first. So it was funny that the guys actually reached out to me. I just had a great group of kids, and Larry touched on it earlier. A bunch of kids who are unsung heroes that you're with every day that aren't going to get recognized by the media and things like that. And I had a ton of those guys on my team. And, a couple players, Keontae Jones, Malik Meadows, Keith Brown. I mean, those guys are warriors. Like, we're in the middle of a game, and Keontae would just be picking up people, full court, denying them. And then I'm like, what is he doing? Like, we're not even playing. And they would just be like, just let him go. Just let him go. So, I mean, he was a great piece to our team. It's going to be tough losing guys like that. You can replace talent, and we have definitely some shooters and some stuff coming up on the JV team. But when you look trying to replace that, it might be the toughest part. And you take bits and pieces from what you see from coaches, and you really try to establish a program. And I'm not prideful. I'll take bits from coaches if they're working. If a coach has a great baseline out of bounds play, I'm going to steal it. Like, if I see coaches doing things that are successful and successful ways of training, and whatever it may be, I'm going to take those things and try to apply that to my program and try to be the best possible program that we could be. But we pride ourselves on developing kids. And you look into Jamon Jones. I mean, he wasn't a player that was super high AAU. He wasn't really super touted. His first year he played JV. Second year he was kind of thrust into a starting role. We weren't too deep, and he just developed into a very good player. So it's great to see that as a coach, but you really take pride on developing and having certain rules and standards that your program is built on, and then you go from there.
Guys, I hope you guys had as much fun the second time around as we did the first time. I'm telling you, this has been a great chat, and a lot of people around Western New York. I want to thank Russ Kingsbury. He's the one that really put this idea in my head. He actually demanded I do it, or he'd never talk to me again. But I don't want this to be the last one. I want you guys back. I want more coaches, but I definitely want to get you guys one-on-one too, so we could spend more time talk about your program in particular and things of that nature, what you guys are trying to do. I know we're riding this spring season COVID thing out right now. We'll be in summer and then fall seasons and then basketball right around the corner. But I don't want you guys to be forgotten about and wait till like October, November before we talk again. If you guys need anything, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear more stories from around the Monsignor Martin and Section 6 basketball landscape. You guys are always welcome to join me here on WNY Athletics, the Sportsline.
Thanks, Frank. Really appreciated it.
Logistics Plus is a global transportation provider headquartered in Erie, PA, with locations worldwide, including right here in Western New York. Logistics Plus is consistently recognized as a fast-growing transportation and logistics company, great supply chain partner, top freight broker, leading project cargo manager, and a great place to work. With a strong passion for excellence, our 500-plus employees put the plus in logistics. Call our Buffalo office today for an efficient, personal approach for all of your transportation needs.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to WNY Athletics. This is the high school sports line. We just heard from some of the area's best coaches around Western New York and the Section 6 chairman. We're doing just an all-Western New York basketball show today. Boys basketball, the Buffalo News put out the all-Western New York this past weekend, and from top to bottom, it's just A-plus material. So a shout-out to Miguel Rodriguez. We have him here today, and he's going to talk about kind of what went into that, and Chad, all the works that he's doing with Centercourt. Again, the Centercourt, he'll talk about the player of the year, the coach of the year, and things of that nature. What he has plans maybe for next year. The Centercourt Classic this past year was a major success. And we also have Matt Spielman from the Post-Journal. He can speak up about those Class C and D teams that we don't necessarily see a whole lot of up here in Western New York. Unless they're playing in Chad's tournament, we have to kind of go down there to get a good look at some of those teams. And I'm glad we do. And then Tom Prince from WNY Athletics, who called 2-3 dozen games, basketball games this year on our different affiliates, our Mixer channel, NFHS, and on YouTube. I'm on Senior Martin and the public school games. So I've got them here. I'm going to go to Miguel first. Miguel Rodriguez, who's been with the Buffalo News for umpteen years now, did a great job this past weekend putting the All-Western New York out. Miguel, great job with that. And, of course, I really liked the Tyler Hines story you did earlier in the year that came out. Miguel, how you doing through all the whole COVID shutdown thing?
Okay, hanging in there. Thanks for having me on. How you guys doing?
We're moseying on.
So what's up?
What went into the All-Western New York? How many people help you put that all together? I know there's a lot of people involved in your poll, a lot of coaches and Chad and others, just everything that went in putting this particular issue out, and then getting down to ranking that first team. How hard was that? And was it a clear-cut number one this year, All-Western New York Player of the Year?
Well, I mean, I sent nomination forms to all the pollsters and some other trusted area coaches. Once they, this year I got about 15 back out of the 20 or so I sent out. We go through them all. I tally them all up, and I mean it's a pretty democratic process. If it looks like someone has an agenda when they turn in the ballot, I merely toss it and don't even bother counting it, just because it's going to screw up the fairness of the process. And I mean, also do a little more consulting with those I trust, like Chad and Universal, from the New York State Sports Writers Association, and a couple coaches I won't mention, and just basically. I mean, it's the formula I got. It's kind of like golf. The lower your score, the higher the team you're going to finish on. We had like 2 kids who were unanimous first team picks from everyone, and the player of the year vote wasn't really that close. Most people, including myself, that turned in a ballot, they thought health sciences. Javon Jones had the best season, and I mean, I think it shows. I mean, they were 23-1. Could have easily have been 24-0. And when he wasn't out there, they looked a little bit out of sorts. And even when they were, and he was a calming influence, and they wouldn't have rallied to beat North Tonawanda, the overall A final without him. I mean, so some of the harder calls. I mean, that last spot for first team. I mean, it was tied between 2 players who I will not say who they were. I mean, it's just. I mean, went back and forth, talked to a few coaches, and finally just made the call that way, because I mean, it was one of those things where each had the same amount of first team votes, the same amount of second team votes, and same amount. Each mysteriously got a fourth team vote. Which is still a head scratcher there, but I mean, but that was. Oh no, I mean it's a little bit more. It's a little more complex and harder to do in football, which I mean, football, it's not easy, but I mean, having a wise sage like Dick Gallagher involved with that, I mean, the process is a lot quicker and a little bit more, well, not as painful, I guess, as playing the 2 basketball teams together. So they're doing the girls this week and taking a break from working on that stuff right now.
Going down to Chad from Centercourt, Chad from Centercourt. Chad, just talk about your player of the year. I guess it was unanimous around Western New York. Your coach of the year, what went into that, and some of the players that really left seniors. Let's stick to seniors. Senior players that left a lasting impression on you, and who you think has a shot at really advancing themselves at the next level.
So if we start with the player of the year, I also went my CC MVP, the Centercourt most valuable player was Javon Jones from Health Sciences. I don't think I would necessarily call it a slam dunk decision, because Dwayne Vass was, for me, he was the other guy that was in serious contention for that at the end of the year. I remember when I walked out of Buff State on Tuesday night after watching Health Sciences beat NT and watching another great performance from Jones. thinking, someone came over and said, well, there's your player of the year right there. And it was actually an area coach who watches a lot of basketball and whose opinion is very valuable. And I said at the time when he said that to me, well, we still got to see how it all plays out. He said, there's nothing left to play out. And I said, oh, absolutely. Health Sciences could lose on Saturday night. Canisius could win a state championship. They could show up at the Fed and make some noise, led by Vass. I always like to see it all play out. And I thought Dwayne Vass's season was special, one of the best players I've ever seen at Canisius. So I don't call it a slam dunk, but I went with Jonesy, and obviously I'm a huge Jonesy fan as well. I thought that the season he had was special. I think that head-to-head meeting that they had against Canisius, where he won the game, where his team won the game, and he played well. He earned player of the game honors in that one, along with showing up in every big game as Vass did. You got to make a decision at the end of the year. So Jonesy was my guy, but I definitely like to always let that play out. As far as the coach of the year, the Centercourt coach of the year, I think that if you asked me heading into Buff State week, who do you think is the odds-on favorite to win, I would have said Ty Parker. Based on the season that Health Sciences had. I didn't enter Buff State week thinking that Lancaster was going to be crowned Section 6 champions. I didn't think that they were going to knock off Niagara Falls. And I think that went a long way toward it. And then for them to end the deal, I think when you bring in all the other factors that surrounded everything with Lancaster's season, John's season, his personal life, I think it all came together and made a lot of sense. Overcoming a 61-year title drought is pretty huge. To go back to Ty Parker for a second, Health Sciences has reached the state semifinals 2 years. They might have done it again this year. So maybe not even on paper, maybe the best record Health Sciences has had. Maybe they're not their most accomplished season because we didn't get a chance to see how it plays out. But Ty Parker is going to have that program as a top tier, and he'll get a coach of the year. I have no doubt about that. And I think Ty is a special coach. I just thought that this year, it kind of, once all the smoke cleared, I looked at it and thought, gosh, John Otto was a great pick for that award, and I was happy to give it to him.
I'm going to go to Matt Spielman real quick, Chad. I'll come back to you. Matt Spielman, down the area you cover, again, you're with the Post-Journal, a lot of work down there in Jamestown. You saw one hell of a basketball team this year in Jamestown with a lot of returners coming there. That's obviously a higher class school, but if you want to talk a little bit about that Jamestown team and what they have coming back, were they a surprise to you at all, or is that right about how well you thought they'd play throughout the year? And then if you wouldn't mind, just talk about some of those C&D players that you saw that that will leave lasting impressions.
Yeah. Jamestown, it's funny because they're a large school. They're a AA. They're an A for football next year, but they almost have a little small school feel with having cross-sport athletes with so much specialization these days. You see Damari Jones and Elijah Rojas and Jalen Butera and those guys that for football and basketball were kind of leading the charge on both aspects. And I think they're gonna do the same thing next year. I mean, those three are back, and when we came down to our all-star team, a lot of stock goes into Jamestown. A lot of times their best player is right up there for our player of the year, just for the level of play they're playing at versus C&D. But we also don't want to discount, the C&D kids can't do anything about what size school they're at, and they still deserve just as much respect. So Jamestown, I think they're probably a little upset with the result in the AA semis, but I think those top four, those top six in AA, any night, it could have been different results as the regular season showed. Well, yeah, when it came down to our all-star team, other than Jamestown, we have Southwestern, Dunkirk, and Fredonia and B's, and then it's all C's and D's. So Southwestern, Dunkirk had kind of down years. So after Jamestown, there was a couple Fredonia kids, and then it was all C's and D's. So we were down pretty much, throughout the season and coming down to the end before playoffs, it was really Damari Jones, Tyler Hind, and Cameron Barmore for the top three spots. And then I think Brad Nelson at Frewsburg was a pretty solid fourth best for us, where he was below those three, but probably above everybody else. So yeah, it just came down to, when Pam went out early, that North Collins shocker, I mean, not that it wasn't Cam's fault, and he put up huge numbers, but I think it was more just a level of play for Panama versus when we went with Randolph. We went Tyler Hind at Randolph. It was just, I mean, that undefeated Western New York record until that final C crossover game kind of cemented it with his numbers. And even though it's a single season award, sometimes when it's close, you go career accolades, and when he's setting scoring records and 3-pointer records, and it kind of gave him the edge over Cam and Damari for Player of the Year. And then we got down to that 5th spot on the first team, and it was we went. There was a couple Fredonia kids they played a high level, and they had a great season before losing to Allegheny. But we went with Elijah Rojas at Jamestown just for that level of play and kind of everything else he did. He didn't score as much, but I mean, Scott Kinberg saw him night in, night out, and he could lock down defender with assists, and he kind of just did it all for Jamestown. So that's how we came about our first team. But yeah, with the C&D schools, I think obviously Cam Barmore across the board, every sport, senior kid that everybody's going to miss watching on the football field, on the basketball court. Obviously, it looks like he's going to miss out on a possibility at a state, high jump title. And then Tyler Hind, his career accolades speak for themselves. And he's going to go play D2 basketball because of it. So, I mean, those are some kids that really are going to be missed down here.
Tom, you called a number of games. You did all the Buff State games, all the boys' games at Buff State, including the crossovers. A number of park schools throughout the year. You were up at Canisius calling games. Is there one game in particular that happened during the regular season that kind of maybe stood out in your mind, and then the games at Buff State? Which one are you going to not forget for a long time?
Park Health Sciences. I mean, that was by far what I saw as one of the best games here in Western New York. I mean, Health Sciences led that game from wire to wire, except for the last bucket of the game is all that it was. It was that difference from Health Sciences. Chad talked about earlier, from them going undefeated and us possibly talking about Ty as being coach of the year. I mean, it was that great of a game, and Bradbury putting that back on the missed 3-point attempt was a difference in the game.
And if Health Sciences has another half second, they may win that.
Yeah, literally, probably a little bit more, because I think it was a 3-quarter shot that went up at the end with how much time was left. So I think they needed a little bit more just to get the ball down the court. The way the game was going, it was going to be who had the ball last was going to be who was going to win that game.
Talk about that game at Buff State, Olean and Allegheny Limestone, how it came to an end there with a last-second shot by Covey James. He talk about a player that really rose to the occasion inside Buff State. Not to say he didn't have a good year coming up to that point, but he really separated himself and took the Olean team on his shoulders. And really, if you didn't stop him, you weren't going to stop Olean. And he was just phenomenal when it came to Buff State games, and especially when you talk about what he did in that game to be able to finish it off was just second to none. He really just said I'm going to put the team on my back and I'm going to win this for him. And it's exactly what he did. I'm going to go to Miguel. Miguel, game of the year for you. You saw a number of basketball games, obviously, but what game stood out to you other than the Health Sciences Park game? Because Tom already called that. So I'm going to steal that one away from you. Take Park Health Sciences out of the picture here. What was the game of the year outside of that one?
Well, yeah, think about that one. That was that was a great game and was mine.
Could it have been Timon Canisius?
Maybe the second game where Timon beat him. Maybe. That was okay. It made me a believer of Timon. Seeing them pull out that win there. Jameer Patton was. He was one guy they had to stop, and they couldn't stop him that day. And me and Canisius, they got down behind them. They had a furious rally to come back and actually take the lead. And you're thinking, okay, Timon's okay, it's over for Timon, but then Timon, they showed something and they came back and end up winning that thing. That was a good game. Try to think of another one. The St. Joe's U Prep, that came down to that should have been St. Joe's Park, but that's another story right there, Marcus Hutchins. But that was a thrilling finish right there too. It came down to, was it Deshaun that made the basket to win there, or Glover? I forget. But it was almost a wired. It was almost like a final second finish there too, and that was a great back and forth game too. There were a lot of good games out there. Although Tom claimed the best one for his. But yeah, there are a lot of good ones out there. Canisius Niagara Falls. That was a great game there. Turner and Vass going at it that day. There are a lot. There are a lot of games. There's still some I wanted to see. This damn coronavirus, kind of leaving an incomplete feeling to the season. I would have liked to have seen. I wanted to see Health Sciences against Rochester East in the worst way to see who would have won that game, and would like to have seen if Canisius and Timon, if they could have won their games and gone to the Federation. Stuff happens and it's out of your control. What can you do about it?
We go down to Chad. Chad, out of those 5 public school teams from Section 6 that came out of Buff State, which ones gave Section 6 the best opportunity to get out to states, qualify? Who had the best chance of getting out of Buff State against Section 5?
In order, I would say Middle College, followed by Health Sciences, Olean, Lancaster, and then Sherman.
Okay. The biggest upset of the year, was it that Panama North Collins game?
The biggest upset, it might have been. That was a shocker. And I think if you took the fact that Panama had been ranked number 1 in Class D for a good chunk of the season, that they came in. They didn't even have to win a game to get to JCC because there was only 7 teams in D, so they had a bye right to JCC. North Collins, I really don't think they were on anyone's radar to come in and win that game, and then factor in the way that the game was won. You get the whole package there, and that's probably your upset of the season.
Chad, were you down at that game?
I saw North Collins playing the championship game against Sherman, but I was not live at the game when North Collins hit the buzzer beater to defeat Panama. No.
Let me just check with Matt. Matt, I don't believe you were at that game either, but correct me if I'm wrong. Were you down for that game at JCC?
I didn't cover that one. Cam Hurst, another guy in our office, did. It's just so, even looking back, it's wild when you see North Collins' next game. Sherman, it was 15, I don't know, it was 50 something to 40. And Panama, from what they came from last year, how their season ended at the Final Four, and it's just mind-boggling that these two things could happen to this team that, if for all as all intents and purposes, it was going to be Panama Sherman final, and even that Panama likely would freeze. Everybody thought.
Was it just one of those? Am I fair to say it's one of those situations where a team has played so well throughout the year, and you've got a collection of kids who really didn't know how to lose big games, may have taken previous success for granted and just overlooked this particular team? Not to beat a dead horse. I hate to do that, but is that probably In your estimation, would you say that's a fair statement, or?
Yeah, I mean, they like that league beat each other up. I mean, there was like Panama had to play games against Westfield and had to play games against Frewsburg and had to play games against Sherman, and they lost some of those games, and they weren't deep. Like they had 5 kids played, they had 7 or 8 on the team, and the last 1 or 2 didn't play. I mean, the Connor Cooper came on. Garrett Hinsdale's a great kid who's an outstanding quarterback who's on the basketball team and could score double digits on certain nights, but he's not a basketball player, and it's not a shot at him. And Cam Barmore's best sport is probably football. He's an athletic freak who plays basketball and can score 40 points and grab 20 rebounds because of it. But he's a football player. He's a high jumper, and he plays basketball because he would play at other schools, but it's a Class D school, and he's the best athlete in the school. And they all have maybe their worst night, and North Collins has their best night, and that's what happens.
That's a good one. That's good there, Matt. Back to Tom. At Buff State, who made their best case for first team, second team, third team that may not have necessarily been on that radar? Like, who came to Buff State? I'm going to ask the same question of you, Chad and Miguel. Who came to Buff State and actually made just an unbelievable case for themselves that this player had to get on one of these number 1, 2, 3, or 4 teams? Anyone in particular, Tom, that you can remember?
Yeah, I absolutely think the person I thought that really played into it was Dante Moultrie of North Tonawanda. Just had an incredible run at Buff State. It was a big difference and a difference maker in those games that I thought he stood out and got himself on those teams from what he did at Buff State. Also, we also talked about Ole, and I thought James was another one who during the season may not have been on those radars for one of those teams and absolutely played where he was a must to be on one of those teams at Buff State. But I thought those were the 2 players that came onto the scene and really made their Western New York debut, in essence, of saying we really had to be there. I thought those were my 2 big players.
All right, Chad, same question.
So Tom aced that one. He gets a 100. That was the answer. I'll just further his point and say Kobe James wasn't even the player of the year in his league. Casey Curran was from Allegheny Limestone. And North Tonawanda, I mean, you got to tip your hat to Coach Ryan Mountain and the team he had this year because, I've said it before, North Tonawanda was a 2-3 zone team. That's what everyone thought of them as. And this year he came out and he said, with the horses that I have, I've got 5 players who can all be interchangeable on the court together. They want to play fast. They can score. So we're going to change what we do here at NT. And he played to the talent that he had. And, an exceptional job, an exceptional finish to their season. And Dante Moultrie was part of a crowded room at NT, and what he did, I think from my sample size I had of the Jacks this year, I thought that Moultrie was probably their best player, but his performance at Buff State was what absolutely kind of answered that question, I think, for everybody. So I loved Tom's answer. I love his 2 picks, and I couldn't agree with him more.
Chad, following up to that, the coaching job that Ryan Mountain did, especially towards the end of the season, how much consideration did he get for Coach of the Year?
He was the Coach of the Year in 2017 when his team won a Section 6 championship. He definitely, I think, put his name into the hat of names that you would put in for that award. I think that, for me, John was the pick, Coach Otto from Lancaster, but I went out of my way to seek Ryan Mountain out and tell him exactly how good I thought he did this season on a couple occasions, and he knows I'm a big fan of his coaching.
Were you surprised by the way they were able to play with health sciences at Buff State?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Health sciences is one of those teams that I say they let a lot of teams look good with them. Like they'll run with you, and like they played a couple games against Tapestry, and if you're just looking at the score or looking at the game and saying, "Wow, that was a close game that those 2 teams played," I think they could play Tapestry 10 times and probably beat them 10 times, but they'd all be close games. That's just health sciences. They'll if they battle with Park all game, it was a great game. Sometimes they'll blow a team out, but Health Science is one of those teams that they'll let teams in and they'll play with them, but then they'll find ways to win at the end, and maybe that's what kind of raises someone's stock like Jonesy as you're watching in crunch time, whether it was against Amherst, whether it was against NT, even against South Park. There's moments in those games where it just becomes the Jonesy show, and they start running the floor and just looking special, and then you look at the score at the end of the game, and it's a 4-point game, but what you saw was you kind of know, Health Sciences they're pretty special this year, and Jonesy was pretty special. So, I was surprised that NT played a 4-point game with them. I think that that's definitely a credit to Ryan Mountain, the team they had, the coaching, the game plan he came in with. I don't think Health Sciences thought they were going to be in a 4-point game that night.
I'm going to go to Miguel. Miguel, in terms of where teams are classed, there's been a lot of discussion from all angles here. Health Sciences, are they playing in the right class here in Western New York, or should they be down at B, or are they right where they're supposed to be in A?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I mean, technically they're a public school, Grant. I mean, they're a charter school, I look at it this way. I mean, you got Tapestry. They're in class. They've been classy for how long? And they've only won one final out of like the 3 straight they've been to. I mean, they're still in Class C. They haven't been moved up just because of their past success. While Health Sciences, they get the back-to-back state Final Fours in B, and then next thing you know, they move them up to Class A after their D1, after their legit D1 commit. Devontae Gaines heads a prep school before going to Tennessee. I mean, they punish. I don't know if it's a punishment type of thing. Maybe it is, but if you're going to do it to them, you should probably move Tapestry up to Class 2 for their successes they've had. But so, I mean, if they did it equally, I wouldn't have much of a problem with it. But because you kind of got that going on right there, where it's like, well, they're having all that success, yet you're not moving them, but they're having success, but you're moving them. I mean, why? I mean, how come the two different things? I mean, I'm pretty sure the fact that Ty has his own as part of an AAU program in the houses, I'm sure that probably goes into the section committee's thinking there. Maybe that's, but at the same time, it's like, well, they're having success. You should probably, I mean, if you're going to penalize one, you should penalize the other. In football, I mean, the 1 year Maple Grove, when they were merged with Chautauqua Lake, they beat Bennett in the Class C final back in 2015, I think it was. It was an overtime win. Probably one of Kurt Fisher's greatest coaching jobs, where they beat a loaded Bennett team that they probably shouldn't have beaten, but they beat them anyway. During the off season, they're like, okay, because Maple Grove, Chautauqua Lake had been to the year before, they lost in the D final. Then they win the Class C. They're going to move them up to Class B just because, okay, well, you're merged, so you had success. I mean, they end up, this may be 2 different points there, but I mean, the section, if you're like, if they think you have an unfair advantage, whether it's you're merged or a charter school, I mean, they've had a history of doing that, where they'll move teams up from the classification they should be, whether it's fair or not. I mean, but in this case, I mean, Tapestry, if you're going to have Tapestry in C, leave them in C where they should be and not leave Health Sciences in B where they probably should be, that's kind of an unfair thing, in my opinion. It's like, well, if you're going to move them up to A, then you should move them up to B. If not, then leave them in Class B.
Matt, for Matt Spielman, going into the 2020-2021 season, who down in C and D, sophomores, juniors, freshmen, are you waiting to see next year? who's ready to make an impact?
Well, I feel bad for Sherman and also optimistic because they're a team that very well could be back next year and be able to do something about not getting to play a regional or a possible state Final Four. Justice Hanold's a senior. He's maybe their third leading scorer, third best player, but Swavik's a junior, the best athlete that'll be left down here next year. Gerald Karras was only a sophomore this year, and he's probably their best basketball player.
Sophomore?
Yeah, he's going to be a junior, and Slavik will be a senior. So when I talked to Corey Emery, who did a great job this year, after the season, he said the same thing. Hopefully these guys who are back will be able to do something for the seniors who weren't able to finish it out this year. And I think with Slavik and Gerald Karras, and they have a big guy, Keith Gormley, who's a junior this year, who'll be back. He didn't score a lot, but he's their top rebounder. I do think they'll be able to do something about it next year. Randolph's going to take a hit, obviously, with Tyler Hine gone. Gabe McCoy's back, and he's been a guy that I think he probably wants more out of himself. I know Kevin Hine wants him to kind of step up when he's the guy next year at Randolph. Southwestern had a bad year this year, but they have a couple of young guys. Cal Ricker from football, and Aiden Kennedy, the quarterback from football, and Nate Johnson, a football player. They're all young, so they didn't have a lot of senior. I think Mitch Pasquarella, he's obviously got his focus on baseball, and I think they could do it. That they're going to be better next year than they were this year. So I think those teams that are top tier teams that'll have some talent back, and obviously Jamestown, like we talked about earlier, with their junior class and the sophomore, I think.
Not just on the hardwood, but also on the football field as well. Tom Prince can attest to that. Chad, talk about the kid from North Collins, Tyler Robinson, and the season that he had. I know he was named CCAA East 2 Player of the Year, and he had that unforgettable shot against Panama.
So he's 6'5", 6'6". He's a double machine for that team. Blocked a lot of shots too, and not unlike Cam Barmore, he's a big athlete amongst kids who maybe aren't the same size or at the same level of athleticism. So he definitely stood out for what he could do. You could tell that and I don't even know this for sure, he just seemed like a multiple sport athlete to me. Seemed like he would have been a football player and been doing something in the spring. I saw him in the championship game against Sherman. That was the first time I got to see him. You could definitely see what he had to offer. I was impressed with him. And I was happy for him to see that he hit that big shot and kind of got his name out there for doing that and getting his team to that championship game, punching the ticket for North Collins, who comes with a little less fanfare than some of the other Class D teams who seem to annually show up at JCC and make noise. So he was. I thought that if you're looking at Class D, there was Cam Barmore and there was Tyler Robinson. That from my sample size, they were the two best players in that classification this year.
Guys, I wish we had more time, but honestly, this thing's going to tell me it's going to cut us all off in just a minute here. But I wanted to thank you guys for your time, and I'd love to do this again. Miguel will be catching up with you hopefully after the girls come out and talk about that. And Tom, you called a number of those games, so obviously I'd like to talk to you about that. And Chad, I could devote an entire hour or 2 hours, 3 hours, or a week to talking high school basketball with you and Spielman, everything you're doing down there with Scott Kinberg in Jamestown, and how that entire football, basketball, and I don't know much about the baseball team. Tom can speak about that, but that football team and basketball team is back, and I think that's going to spell trouble for a lot of teams up here north of Fredonia, Dunkirk, in A. But gentlemen, hopefully we can all come back soon and wrap this up again and talk high school sports with you guys. And Miguel, great job again on the All Western New York. Chad, as always, with Centercourt, definitely the go-to site when it comes to high school basketball. And Chad, I don't know why you don't fool around with football. You do get around to some football games.
I love some football. The reason I don't is because my real job, the restaurant doesn't close until well into football season. So I've never wanted to be Johnny come lately as your source for all things high school football starting in week 4. So I just enjoy the season the way I get to and gear up for basketball. Would love to tip my hat to the four of you guys, though, for your coverage this season. Everybody on this panel, you picked a great panel, and everybody here is such a huge contribution to high school sports. So great job by everybody again this year.
All right, we'll talk to you guys again. Thank you very much for your contribution today. Western New York high school basketball fans learned a whole lot, and I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of views on this. So thanks again for helping me out with this. Hey, everyone, that was a pretty good show, you got to admit. I mean, where else are you going to have 9 different voices for high school basketball, a postseason show like that? You get a guy from the Buffalo News, the Post-Journal, Chad from Centercourt, Tommy, WNY Athletics, and then you got some of the best coaches in the area, including the Section 6 basketball chairman. It really doesn't get much better than that. And Russ Kingsbury, thank you very much again for suggesting that we do something like this. Some questions were answered. We didn't get to everything, and there were some questions that, we're going to answer on another show. I got guys coming back. The guys you saw today, I reached out to them afterwards and said, look, I want to have you back on, maybe more one-on-one with you to talk about your program in particular. Miggy, you'll be back. I talked to Chad in particular, and Chad's got, there's a bunch of questions came in for Chad, like 35 questions came in just for Chad. And I didn't want to make the show just about Chad, and Chad deserves his own program. So Centercourt and I are going to hash things out, and we're going to answer every one of those questions that were sent. We're going to answer those questions. So give us a little bit of time, but we'll get Chad in here within the next week, and we'll run with those questions, and we'll get them answered. And what a show. Glad you watched it tonight. Thank you very much. Tomorrow I got Connor Desiderio, the high school football and baseball pitcher from Maryvale. I'm very excited to have Connor on. Great kid. Love talking to Connor. Me and Connor could talk for an hour. So tune in tomorrow night, 8 o'clock on Facebook or YouTube. Thanks again for watching tonight, everyone. Be safe out there. Be safe.